Praise the Lord, good people. I'm happy to be back with another Keycloak tutorial, and I'm happy to be sharing this one specifically with you. We're going to be talking about access tokens within a Keycloak. Keycloak has a number of access tokens, such as the requesting party token, abbreviated as RPT, the protection API token, abbreviated as PAT, and then the other ordinary token, access token. I don't have a name for that, but allow me call it the bearer token, though I think even these others are type bearer. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. But without further ado, let's jump right into it. Yes, so what do we have here? I have a use case for you, because I thought as opposed to just giving you, a textbook definition of what PAT, RPT tokens is, I thought a use case would be more proper for us to to understand and relate to the concepts, because personally, I've also had a bit of a rough time. Not really so rough, but yeah, I had a bit of a learning curve trying to understand the different tokens in Keycloak and what each one of them does. So with this use case, I hope to be clearer, even though you might be hearing this for the very first time. So we have a user, our customer down here, who wants to access one of our services via a web browser here. And this is our beautiful login page, and the services which are over here: resource server 1, resource server 2, behind an authentication server. So the services here cannot be accessed unless you've been authorized to do so. So this user has to be logged in and verified before we can give them access to our resources. Yeah, so let's look at the first token. So in Keycloak lingo, when you log in using the username or the password grant by providing the username and your password, Keycloak responds back to you. The authentication server Keycloak will respond back to you with an access token, which I'm choosing to call a bearer token. Yeah, so the first step is you logging in and you're getting back a token. So I have my Postman open here to show you what's happening in the diagram back here. So the first request is a login request, and these are the values that it takes. This is of grant type, password, and then you're providing a username and a password and stating the client ID. We've talked about clients in Keycloak. If you don't know what this is, please refer to some of my older tutorials on this. Yes, so you provide a username, a password, and then you're calling the token endpoint. I'm using environmental variables in Postman, but on the side here, I just gave an example of what the endpoints are, so that we are on the same page. So you will, in your installation, you will have something like this, definitely with the IP here, or the domain name. And then the other thing that changes is also the RAM name. Your RAM name, not the master RAM. Yeah, you can use the master RAM, but it's discouraged. You're discouraged from using the master RAM. You encourage to always create your own RAM where your clients are going to be. Yeah, so give it a cool name and then change this. That's for the token. Then we shall see this later. Yes, so By supplying this, then you've created a user who has a username. Again, if you want to see how to create users, you refer to some of my other tutorials. Send a request, we have a response back. So this is how our response looks like. You have an access token and a refresh token down here, and a few other parameters down there. So this token is what I was talking about when I said that when you provide your username and password and you call Keycloak for authentication, yeah, this is what you get back as the access token. And maybe the other thing to note is I'll log in to my Keycloak here. Okay, let's log in. Yes, so let's look at our clients. In some of the values that we are providing is the client ID, this lenders rest. So I wanted to show you what that is. Lenders rest is this, and it's a client or a resource server. But what's unique about this one is the access type. It's a public one. So it's a public one, and we have the direct access grants enabled. So this allows us to to use the username and password values, and to use the password credentials grant for us to be able to authenticate with Keycloak. This is there are other access types like confidential. We will see these because in our setup here, this first resource server here has a note down here, public client, but then we have these other resource servers and their confidential client. There is a difference, and this is how the public one is configured. You have to choose public. And for the confidential ones, we'll not dive deep into what exactly they do and the differences, but yeah, I'll just give a little overview. Yes, so where were we? So we've gotten our token back. So this is the first kind of token. I refer to this as the ordinary token, the ordinary bearer token. Let's go to, you need to check out what's inside this token. So it's a JWT compliant token. Yeah, so if you go over to jwt.io and then paste it here on the left, it will be decoded for you, and you can see a couple of information. So yeah, in this token, yeah, there is it's bearer, this is our client, lenders rest. You have a bunch of roles here, yes, roles there, and then the name, the preferred name, the username, the email. Yes, so you have this information, but if you're to call a confidential client, there's more information that you need that is not within this token. So that takes us to the second kind of token, which is called the RPT token. So on our use case here, after you've authenticated with Keycloak and you've gotten a response back, the bearer token, the third request is you're requesting for a service from your browser, because you have a token in the browser. So you're sending a token to the resource server, and you're requesting for a service. So in my setup, I have this public client that is accessible by, it's a public one, so it's accessible by a web browser, by a mobile application. So, and I'm using this public client or resource server. I'll use the words client, resource server interchangeably because they mean one and the same thing. Yeah, so I'm using this public client or resource server to request Keycloak to exchange for me, number one, to verify the token that I've received that's authentic. It's Keycloak that issued this token. This Keycloak server of mine is the one that issued this token, so he has to Keycloak has to verify this. And then secondly, I'm requesting Keycloak to exchange for me this bearer token and give back an RPT token. RPT token is the requesting party token, because in the subsequent request, when you try to access any of the resource, the confidential clients, you cannot use this normal token that we saw earlier. You have to use what we call an RPT token to access a confidential client when you're requesting for a service. So that's why we have this resource service, and its use mainly is just to verify the token, exchange the bearer token from the browser for an RPT, which I never send back to the user. This RPT is sent to the resource server to verify and to grant service for my request. So let's do it here. Let me show you one other thing. I have a simple script here that whenever I run this, it's setting my environmental variables. It's setting the bearer token environmental variable and the refresh token environmental variable, because in the next request, when I'm requesting for an RPT, remember we are exchanging a bearer token for an RPT token. Under authorization tab, I have to give it the bearer token that I received from my login request. So supply to the bearer token, which is also an environmental variable there. And the other fields that you have to give as you send your request is the audience or the client for which you want this RPT. Remember, we have multiple clients back here. I have resource server 1, resource server 2. You can have so many resource servers, and these can represent your micro profiles if you're coming from the Java world, or they could represent services, different services that you have on your server. So get the bearer ordinary token first, then tell us which client, and then the grant type is this. Just copy it as is and then send your request. So we have our response back here. It looks like the former response, but they're different. This now is an RPT. Inside this access token, we have an RPT, or a requesting party token. Let's copy it, go over to JWT. Let me just spin up another tab so that you can see the difference in these tokens. Paste the token here. Yeah, so some of the information is the same information that we have in this other token here that we decoded, but you realize that there's a bit of extra information. We didn't have this over here. It's just resources. We don't have this authorization. So authorization, I've talked about this in my other tutorials when I was talking about resources and how to protect resources. So under authorization, we have our resources and the different scopes. Like for example, we have this resource called tax obligation resource, and with this resource has a URI or a URL behind it, but it's not shown here. But I'll show you how to get that in case you want to see that. And then we have the different scopes, all what we are able to do on this resource. We can modify this resource, we can view, we can create, and by we I mean this user here, identified by this email here, is able to do this. So this user can't delete. This resource has delete, but you can't see delete under their scopes because they don't have the delete rights. Yes, so under Keycloak, another thing to note is the audience. We said audience was lenders. Remember, we authenticated via this resource server which was called lenders rest, but then we got an RPT for this other client which is called lenders. So I'll log in. Where are we? Let me log in and show you that client. This is the client here, and you realize that the access type here is also different. Confidential clients require secret to initiate login protocol. Yeah, so it's not public, but it's confidential. And then we have service accounts enabled, and then we have authorization enabled. With authorization enabled, we are able to see the other information that we saw. This information that we saw in our token, this authorization information here. Yeah, so this is a different client, and actually this client has a number of has more stuff. It has this tab that is not available for the public client. And then under resources, this is the resource that you're seeing, you know, and the reason why you can only see, because I have two resources here, but you're only seeing this is because the client or the user that is logged in is only allowed to access this resource, so you won't be able to have this in the token. And you're seeing that they have it has a number of other scopes or permissions which are not available for that user, that is specifically the delete one. Okay, so that's the, and a few other things here which I won't go into because I already covered these in my other tutorials. Now let's jump back here. So we've gotten an RPT. We have our RPT token. I've shown you how it looks like. Let's now look at the third token. Yes, our third token. So the third token is the PAT, or the protection API token. Maybe to throw a little more light on the RPT before we move, just a bit of a recap. After you've exchanged your bearer token or your normal ordinary token for an RPT token, you're now able to forward a request to the specific server for which the RPT token was received. And then this server, okay, there should be another arrow here pointing to Keycloak, because this is connected to Keycloak to verify the RPT token that you've sent it, that it's authentic. And then that's when you receive a service for that resource that you've requested for. And these can be multiple resource servers here, confidential ones. Okay, with that out of the way, let's look at the RPT token, the PAT token, which is not within our use case here because this use case is done, but which can be useful for other things. Share. I would add it here so that you know what it exactly does. So the RPT token takes just the client ID for which you want the protection API token, and then the client secret. These values are my environmental variables, that's why you can't see them. And then the grant type is client credentials. So that's all you need. You don't have to have anything this side, you just need this. When you send your request, to send you back the PAT. Let's see how it looks like before I tell you what it does. Let's fire up another browser tab. Okay. Yes, so this is the PAT token. It has a little more, more information. I think it also doesn't have the authorization information. Just have a couple other things, but there's also this role. It's important. This scope here, this scope is for that PAT token. There's nothing much. I don't understand some of the things here. Yeah, but I'll tell you what its use is, because I think you're more interested in that. Yeah, so remember when we looked at the PAT token, I told you that this is a resource ID, this is a resource name, but we don't have any more information about this resource. We don't have the URL or the URI. You can access that information from the client using a PAT or a protection API token. So I have another request here. The endpoint looks like this. Of course, change this to your IP or your domain name, and change the school name of the cool realm name. Change this to your realm name, and then the rest stays the same. Then make a call. Yes, what do we have here? We have resources. If you look at this ID, you realize that it looks like this ID here. It's the same. So this request returned back all the resources that are available in that client or resource server. Which one? This one here, this client here. So excuse me. Yes, so it returns for us all the available resources. So yeah, you may be like, this doesn't give a lot of information. Yeah, I know, but there's something we can do to resolve that. There are few other params that this same request it takes, but I'd omitted them out here for brevity, but I'll show them here. So if you add this deep is equal to true, then it goes in deep to give you a little more detail on the resources that are being returned. So let me run this, the same request as the other, but I've just added this, just this only. So but the rest is the same. Yeah, so let me run this. Yeah, voila, now we have the same ID here, but now they've given us the URI, what the URI is, and also we have the scopes, the different scopes under this resource, then the type of resource, who the owner is, whether it's owner managed, accessible. Yeah, we have that information. Then there's this other parameter, this last one here, scope is equal to create. You'll excuse me here, this first one here, if you don't provide the parameters, if you're not filtering anything, to return for you all the resources in all the clients. But then here you can come and restrict this to just the lender's client, owner is equal to lenders, and to just bring for you only the lender's resources. Yeah, so if I remove scope and I call this again, okay, our PAT has expired. Let's get it again. Yeah, so it's bringing for me two resources, this one here which only has view scope, and this second one here which has the other scopes. But here previously I limited it to scope is equal to create, and since we don't have create here, that's why it was only returning just this which has create. If I confuse it and put something like that, then it's going to return for me nothing, because there's no such scope in our resources. Yes, and also lastly, remember all these are using the PAT token that we receive. We are setting it here, and if you check in the authorization, it's what we are using here. So this last one, you can get a resource by its ID. Yeah, by using the ID, just append the ID, the resource ID here, if you want to get just one resource by its ID. Yes, I know this has been a bit long, but I wanted to cover all this, and I hope I've hoped you understand some of the principles behind the Keycloak access tokens, and I hope we've learned something. So let's meet in the next tutorial. God bless you. Bye bye.